It's never been easier to start a business, build a website, or share your vision. We have access to tools, software, and marketing on an unprecedented level. Anyone can do now what only large corporations could do in the past. And we can do it cheaper and better than ever before. But all these solutions also present a challenge. Which tools? What software? Will this service really help me achieve what I'm trying to do? How to understand it all. Just because we have access doesn't mean we know the best way to use it. Trying to navigate all these different aspects requires some type of organization, some type of debriefing. That's where Isar Meitis comes in. A former F-16 fighter pilot in the Israeli Air Force, Isar has learned to debrief everything, to its smallest detail. This attention to detail and ability to deconstruct things went on to serve him well in business. Implementing this mentality with his tribe at 2 different startups, then watching their success, allowed Isar to realize his dream of teacher and mentor. After a corporate buyout of his parent company, Isar had a golden opportunity to scale that dream and share his knowledge with anyone looking to create a business. And the E-Tribe was born. The E-Tribe provides solutions to small business owners and entrepreneurs for free. They break down real, actual tools, products, and software, pros and cons, along with alternatives and competitors. His newsletter also provides key takeaways that will save you time and money, and headache. But most importantly, the E-Tribe shows you how to scale your business, market your product, and grow your tribe in ways you never dreamed possible. If you own a business or want to market any kind of skill or product, you won't want to miss my conversation with Isar Meitis.
But I really, really love teaching. I'm really passionate about it. And I've done it. I had the opportunity to do it several times in my career. The first time was when I was an instructor in the Air Force Academy. So that's the first time I had the opportunity to actually teach people. But then recently I'm teaching at the MBA program where I graduated. That's in Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. I go back and I teach the entrepreneur class like once every semester. I go in, I have a good relationship with the guy who's running the program. And I just taught them 2 weeks ago-ish. And one of the things I asked them is, I said, okay, what tools do you need to start a business today? And I kind of listed all of them and I showed them what I'm using. And I showed them how cheap and easy it is to do this today, like to have a digital business that actually looks legit, and asked them if it's good or bad, right? And some people say this, some people say that. And I said, the good thing is that if you want to have a digital business, you can have one in 2 weeks and it will look phenomenal. The bad thing is, pardon my French, every schmuck in 2 weeks can have a digital business that looks fine.
Right.
Some of them, like you and me, have the right background and have actually done something in their lives to really provide value. Some of them just copy other people's stuff. And if they know how to copy well, they will be above you in search results and they will do a better job on social media. And then what you get is crap. You don't get something that has the depth and the value that people like you and me know how to provide. So I think there's definitely a dilution of quality because it's so easy to create content these days.
Yeah, and everybody and their sister that watches Gary Vee for 5 minutes goes out there and tries to do it. And sure. So you're right. It's like this sea of stuff out there. So trying to find something that's actually worth listening to. And that was one of the things I liked about some of the information that you provided back to me was like one of those things that drives you crazy. You got to be a part of my club to do that.
Yeah. Funny thing is 3 different people that I know through different, one of them is actually from Podfest, but 2 others are totally not related, called me and said, listen, I need an hour of your time to talk about this. Like everyone had a different angle.
That's so cool, right? Yeah.
So the guy from Podfest, he's actually been podcasting for like 2 years now, and he doesn't use UTMs on anything he does. And I'm like, how do you track?
What's a UTM?
So here we go. So here's my second UTM lesson. Maybe I should do a dedicated one on UTMs. But UTM is like a tracking code that you get from, like, there's a million sources, but it connects back to Google Analytics.
Okay. So all dealing with SEO type stuff.
So it's not SEO. So it literally lets you know where people are coming from. So if I put a link to this episode, I will put a different link on Facebook. I will put a different link on YouTube. I will put a different link on LinkedIn. I will put a different link on my email, and then I know where people are coming from. Moreover, I know if the people that came from here stayed for 3 seconds or 30 seconds. So it's not just the quantity, but also the quality of the traffic that you're getting. You can, and I'm one of those crazy people that has like a gazillion of them. So even in my email, in the same email, I would have 2 separate links, even though they go to the same place. So I have like an image of my player, right? So people think they clicking play, that will track that they want to listen to the podcast, even though it goes to the same page. Versus the people say, oh, I want to read the article, and it generates a different tracking code. So, and it's very easy to set up. Like, it's literally minutes and you're up and running. And from that moment on, you start collecting information.
Now, are you doing that through Bluehost? Is that what you?
No. So this is totally disconnected from anything. All you need is Google Analytics connected to whatever it is that you post on. So your blog, basically, and that's it. And from that moment on, all I do is and I'll share it with you. I'll be happy to do this. And it's even on the website somewhere. Like, if you look it up, you'll find it. I have like an Excel file that I created, and it generates the UTMs for you. And my list is now probably, I don't know, a few hundreds long. But every new post, I just copy and paste like the list, and then I just populate the actual details inside.
So now, how did you figure all that stuff out? Where did you learn that?
I was running Last Minute Travel, which it was like a travel startup within a much bigger company. But Last Minute Travel, the organization that I was running, had over 60 employees and did $100 million a year. So you operate like $100 million organization. So I had everything. My marketing team was like 15 people. The only problem is now it's me, right? I don't have the 15 people anymore. I just know what needs to be done at the highest level, because that's the only level I know. That's the only way I used to operate. So the big organization was called Turico Holidays. And Turico Holidays was a huge wholesale travel company, the largest in the US. And Last Minute Travel was just a consumer-facing brand, but it was more, if you want, a client of Turico Holidays than anything else, right? So we built our own technology, our own sales, our own marketing, our own technology, our own mobile app, our own everything. We were like a little company within the bigger company, and we connected to Turico Holidays like any of Turico's clients. The only thing is there was no money changing hands, right? Because it was the same company. But
gotcha. Yeah, they treat it like a separate entity, pretty much.
Yeah.
Cool. And you went from Israeli Air Force to the Semigon, and then that's what brought you to the US? Is that right?
Yes. So I left the Air Force in 99. I went backpacking in South America for 7 months. And
nice.
I started in Mexico, and then did Guatemala, Belize, Costa Rica, Peru, Chile. I then did the same thing in Africa, and then I did the same thing in Southeast Asia. So I had 3 of those trips, like literally backpack on my back, zero planning other than maybe the next 2 days. And it was phenomenal. And it's just, first of all, a lot of Israelis do it. And it's kind of a thing after you leave the military. I've been in the Air Force since the age of 18 to the age of 28.
And that military service is mandatory, correct?
So 3 years are mandatory for men and 2 for women. But because I was an Air Force pilot and an officer, then you obviously stay longer.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot more training involved with all of that. That's really cool. And flying fighter jets, that's got to be pretty cool.
It was fantastic.
That's awesome.
There's very few things that can compete with that.
Well, on that note, let's go ahead and dive right in.
Sure. Make it happen.
This is the Extraordinary Podcast, and my guest today is Isar Meitis.
Hey,
Did I
great to
get
be
it?
here. Yes, you got it.
I forever struggle with the intros, man. Always struggling with the intros. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I can't tell you how many times I have to pronounce my name, spell out my name, and it's in any language, so I'm totally used to it by now.
I also have a habit of picking guests with very unique names as well, so I certainly don't do myself any favors in that regard. But how are you, my friend?
I'm fantastic. I think we sort of figured out the whole stay home thing, so I'm good.
Yeah, this is officially our second episode of the remote broadcast format, so we'll see how it goes. And this is my first one on. Well, no, I guess this will be my second one on Squadcast as well. So hopefully this format will continue to cooperate with me as much as I'm technology challenged. But so for all those who don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and why you're on the show today.
I was born and raised in Israel. I was there until the age of 31, I think. I did most of my adult life as an F-16 pilot in the Israeli Air Force. So I joined the force at the age of 18, graduated flight school at the age of 20, and started fly F-16s at the age of 21, which was phenomenal.
You're straight up Top Gun. Did they call you Maverick?
Yeah, I don't know. It was the funny thing is that movie came out right when we started flight school, so it's the same years.
Yeah,
I watched
timing, right?
sections of that movie like hundreds of times. So yes, we were, a lot of us were Mavericks and Goose.
Nice. That's awesome.
But yeah, then I left the Air Force in '99, went backpacking for 7 months in South America, joined a small Israeli startup that did training and simulation solutions. And with them, when I joined, there was like 20 something people in the startup. And a few years later, we had the opportunity to bring it to the United States. And four of us moved to Florida. So it was myself in charge of anything sales. So it's a small startup. I did sales, marketing, business development, trade shows, all of that.
All those hats.
Yes. And the CEO, the CTO, and the guy in charge of training, we all moved here and really started kind of like the operation in the US.
And that was based on just software that you guys had developed while you guys were in the military, or is that something that you kind of did afterwards? Or
so no, it was after the Air Force, but a lot of the people were ex-Air Force guys. So I think,
obviously it's in the same vein.
Yeah.
Right?
So the entire management team, other than the CTO, were all ex-fighter pilots. Wow. So, but yeah, we came to the US. This is how I got here. And then a lot of interesting things happened. So I don't know how far you want me to go, but
yeah, no. Well, let's stop right there, because I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about your time in the Air Force, because that's obviously a really exciting time, and we've got plenty more to get into.
Sure.
Once you get stateside. But what was one of your most memorable experiences flying jets?
Wow, there's so many. First of all, it's such an amazing experience to be able to do this on many different levels. It's extremely challenging. Every second, every minute, you get measured to your best performance, because if not, somebody shoots you down, or you miss the target, or whatever the training scenario is. And in Israel, the reality is it's not just a training, right? There's operational sorties all the time as well. So you really are, when you think about it in any business, when we measured, nobody really measures us to our best performance every single minute. It would have been exhausting and tiring. But in the Air Force, you get measured to the highest level every single second. And if you asked about, specific things, everybody remembers their first solo flight. You get shakes in your knees when you're on the runway trying to take off, because there's so much adrenaline in you and you don't know what to do. Everybody remembers the first operational sortie, right? The first time you cross enemy lines and you're now, for the first time, doing what you've been training for so long to do. right? There's a lot of fun stuff that happens, obviously. You do deployments to other countries, long range flights, where you can enjoy new views and see new things in a way that nobody else gets to see. I mean, nobody gets to fly in Turkey at 200 feet at 500 knots. Nobody gets to do that unless you're in deployment with an Air Force. It's
right.
And the views are just spectacular. So yeah, there's so many great things that you get in the Air Force. I think you also learn a lot for business, right? On commitment to execution, on the ability to debrief, on focusing on what's important at that minute and making sure that you do it to the best level possible. So there's a lot of great things out of the Air Force.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that appeals to me the most about that type of training in particular is the level of excellence and how you just drill it down into every little detail and everything. I hate to use the word perfection, but that's one of the few times and places where the execution is literally drilled down so perfectly and so precisely that it becomes a thing of beauty. We got to have the Blue Angels fly over yesterday as part of the coronavirus and saluting all the men and women that are serving right now. And it's just so exhilarating to watch that level of perfection, that level of excellence, because there's just no room for error. And when you do things to that level of excellence, you can achieve greatness. And that's kind of what I think a lot of us are searching for.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, like I said, you're measured to your best performance 100% of the time, which is very, very rare. There's very few environments. I would say it's being a fighter pilot or being a competitive athlete, right? It's the two cases where you're measured to the best performance you can generate every single time.
Yeah. And the price for a mistake is very costly. So you can't afford to screw up, which is one of the reasons why I've always thought about it would be neat to get my pilot's license just, recreationally, but I've always steered clear from that because I make so many mistakes all the time. I'd make it through one flight and that would be it. It'd be scraping me off the runway for sure. But one of the things I did want to talk about is some of the things that you took away from being in the military and being a pilot. You referred to it as your ability to debrief and how you debrief and kind of break down everything. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that applies to you in business now?
Sure, I would love to. The Air Force the Air Force training does something to you that is very unnatural. As humans, we do not like to be exposed and admit our mistakes out loud in front of other people. In many cases, we don't even like to admit them to ourselves, right? Well, it wasn't my fault. It was this guy's fault, or the weather was bad, or the whatever. The Air Force training forces you to sit in a debriefing room with a group of people and say, here is exactly what I've done wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they train you to take mental notes of these mistakes, yours and others, so you don't repeat them again. And you do this day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out for so many years, it becomes you, right? It's not your second nature, it's your nature. I debrief everything, Nate. I debrief when I park not parallel to the lines. I'm serious. It's not even a conscious thing. I'm like, oh, I did this. I didn't do the radius right, and that's why I didn't park right. Or when I yell at the kids when they're just trying to do their homework and they didn't get it right. And I'm like, why did you? I'm like, what the hell are you doing? He was really just trying to solve the thing. He didn't. So I subconsciously debrief everything. And that translates directly to business because it enables you not to repeat mistakes, at least not the big mistakes. The other thing that relates to what you said in the beginning is the preparation aspect of things. I will research for days before I do something. And I will not do it before I feel that I'm prepared to do it. And why? Because then I have a much higher chances of success and I'm not going to be wasting time and money at doing it. And again, that's out of the same thing, right? It's knowing that you're not going to fly the mission unless you know exactly how the mission is going to go. You know every single detail along the way. Now, does it have disadvantages? Absolutely. As a tech startup guy, I'm a huge believer in, try something quick, make it ugly, break stuff, figure it out, try it again. But I will do it after a lot of research before I try the first time.
Well, yeah, and every time that you can make good decisions along that process, it's obviously going to lessen your likelihood or increase your likelihood for success. So
Sure.
you don't want to go into that stuff half-cocked for sure. I think that's brilliant. I think all of those things really apply to success in any field, taking the time to do both of those things. Before we jump into more of the business stuff, you kind of caught me off guard with the whole backpacking across South America. I did not know that about you. And so tell me a little bit about that experience. You had been in the military for 10 years flying jets and decided to kind of shift gears and move on to a new phase in life.
Yeah, so it's actually an Israeli thing. A lot of Israelis, when they finish their military service, they go and backpack somewhere. They take a few months off. They usually go and work somewhere, save a little bit of money, and then go backpacking somewhere. The two biggest destinations is Southeast Asia and Latin America, just because it's cheaper, right? So you can stay longer for the amount of money that you have.
And gorgeous too. That doesn't
and absolutely gorgeous. So I went to Latin America without any real plan, right? That was a big part of it. Was I was in the Air Force, and when you're flying jets and you're doing a mission, things are measured in seconds. Like you need to be above the waypoint at that second. Your day is scheduled in seconds, like your takeoff times, your landing, like you literally, the whole thing you do is by the minute, by the second. I'm like, I'm not planning anything. And a lot of people are doing it the other way around. They're saying, oh, we have these 4 months. We need to know exactly where we need to be because we want to maximize the 4 months, right? I did it. I'm like, I'm just going. I know I'm landing in Mexico City and that's it. And I'll figure out the rest. And it was amazing because you get to meet so many interesting people and you get to see so many interesting places and you get to really experience the countries you visit. It's not like, today I take the family, we go somewhere. Okay, we've been there 3 or 4 days, got the tick in the boxes for all the touristic things. And over there, you're immersed with the population. You never stay at hotels because you can't afford it. So you stay at people's homes. They rent a room, you pay them $4 a night, and you stay at their house. So for 6-7 months in different peoples, in different countries, in different regions, hiking in gorgeous, stunning places, scuba diving, riding dirt bikes, like anything you want to do, you just go do it because there's no reason not to.
What was your favorite thing that you did on that experience? What was one of your favorite trips?
There's so many highlights because there's so many different kinds of experiences that you go through. I think I'll break it into two, right? From a people's perspective, I really enjoyed Guatemala. It was very virgin when I got there. There weren't too many tourists, and the people were very genuine and still not trying to sell you stuff at every street corner that you go to. And the locals and the Indians, it was just fascinating. And it's a beautiful country.
What town were you in there?
I was all over the place. Again, I was in Guatemala for a month. So I kept coming back to several different places because just because it was easy from the places I wanted to go. But yeah, so Guatemala was from the people's perspective was amazing. From the views and scenery, Chile and Argentina are just incredible. It's just insane. And the further you go south, the more extreme it gets. And people go, oh yeah, Patagonia. You kind of know the name, but you're like, okay, whatever. It's out of this world. It's like really even just the in-between. Oh, I'm going from this hike to that hike is the most beautiful place you've ever been. So it's
a lonely place too. It's a big country out there.
Yes, there's a lot of sections. So when I was there, I don't know today. I mean, we're talking about 99. But when I was there, the main road going down south of Chile was called El Carretera Austral, and it wasn't paved. So think about I-4 or I-95 or one of those as a dirt road.
For
the whole
mile
way,
after
going south
mile after
to
mile after
from
mile.
Tallahassee to the Keys. And in many sections,
Crazy.
there's nothing on the way. Like there's absolutely nothing. It's crazy. And then there's a little town. And the funny story, those little towns along the way, some of the houses are on the main road. So it's Carretera Austral, number 7, 9, 11. And then number 13 is 130 miles away. But it's the same street address.
It's the next door neighbor, technically. That's great. Let me ask you this. What was one of the most challenging aspects of that trip? Because you're obviously going to run into some complications along the way, trying to figure your way through some of that. What was one of the either scariest or most challenging times for you on that adventure?
So I love that you asked it. So I land in Mexico City. It's my first time backpacking. Since then, I backpacked in Africa and in Southeast Asia and in Europe, but it was my first day. Brand new gear, brand new. I'm an avid photographer, so I had like fancy photography gear. Landing in Mexico City, and I know nothing, right? I don't speak a word in Spanish. And all you hear is horror stories about crime in Mexico City. And you land in the airport, and I'm like, how am I going to get from here to where, well, again, people who are living this era will laugh, but there was this guidebook, right? The Lonely Planet book that says, oh, here's like backpackers hotels that cost X, and this is where they are and how to get to them. And I'm like, how am I going to get from here to there without somebody stabbing me or stealing all my stuff, like on the first hour of the trip? And I didn't even think about it, right? You're so excited about getting ready for the trip. So I land there and I'm literally at the airport thinking what I'm going to do. And then I ran into a Japanese guy who has a backpack and he seems as lost as I am. So I'm like, okay, together we have a higher chances of survival. Let's figure this out. And we looked, I'm like, okay, you can either take the bus, take a taxi, or take the metro and like the subway. And we're, okay, the taxi can take us anywhere he wants and, take us somewhere, stab us, take all our stuff. That's not a good idea. The bus may be better, but it's like $2 and the metro is like 30 cents. I'm like, let's take the metro. So we took the metro. He had a hotel somebody recommended, well, not a hotel, like a backpacker's place.
Right. Like
somebody recommended. And we went there and I'm like, okay, let's go out, explore like the old city. He's like, no, I'm so tired. I came from a long flight. I'm like, yeah, me too. But it's like, we're finally here. And he's like, no, I'm going to sleep. I'm like, okay. So we're sharing a room, right? To make the $7, 3.5 for each for the night we're staying. So he stayed in, I walk out, and it's beautiful. The old city of Mexico City is just gorgeous. It's an old Spanish town, huge squares, beautiful stone buildings. And, I take my big camera out, I take a picture, I put it back in the backpack. I take it out, I take a picture, I put it back in the backpack. I take it out. And people are so nice and they see you with a map and they try to explain to you with, they don't speak English, you don't speak Spanish, but they help you get to places. It was phenomenal. Next morning, same thing. I'm like, I want to go here. It's like, no, I'm still tired. I'm jet lagged. I'm not waking up. I'm like, okay, I'm going alone. And I'm going and same thing. People are really nice to you. And the weather was beautiful and the pictures are gorgeous. And then I'm walking from one place to the other in like a big street. I'm talking like 4 lanes each side. Think about the middle of the city, like a big main area. 2 guys grab me from behind, push me to the wall, put a knife to my neck, and steal my $3,000 Nikon camera. It's like 4 p.m., middle of the day, middle of a crowded street. Somebody put a knife to my neck and stole my camera. What happens in the little alley next to the place that I'm staying at 9 p.m.? And then you're thinking, okay, I got to find a way to report this stolen so I can claim the insurance for the $3,000 camera. So I need to somehow get to a police station in Mexico City where I don't speak a word. I was terrified. Like I was never so scared my entire life before or after that event. And that was day one. That was like 24 hours into like a few months trip.
That's great. That's amazing. And you said you also did some backpacking in Africa and Asia as well?
Yeah. So, I started with the wrong foot forward, right? You start by getting a knife to your neck in Mexico City in day one. It can't get worse. So
right.
I learned a lot of lessons and I really enjoy backpacking. I enjoy the immersion with the people. I enjoy the cultures. I enjoy the food. I enjoy the views. So since then, every time I had an opportunity to go somewhere, I did.
Did you end up picking up much of the language, Spanish in particular?
So Spanish, I went knowing that I want to learn Spanish. It was one of my goals for the trip. So I said, okay, you're gonna learn Spanish. And so I did. By halfway through the trip, I could have maybe not this level of conversation, but I could have a decent conversation in a bar with a local person and really have a conversation, not just haggle for food in the market.
Right. That's great. What was your favorite place to backpack overall?
They're all amazing. Like, it's so hard to pick. I really, it's one of those things that I still have a very long bucket list. And people that hear that, he said, just shut up. Like, you've been to so many places. How can you complain? You haven't been to here. I'm like, yeah, but I haven't been to here. So I think every place just gives you a whole different perspective of life and of the planet we live in, and on how beautiful it is and how beautiful people can be, and different cultures. Again, I just love it. So it's very hard for me to say highlights. There's right, everybody. Sure. I like so many different things that I just enjoy the trip itself.
So let me ask you this. So now you're older, you've got kids, and you're kind of hitting that next phase of life. And you talk about, as a bucket list, getting back out there and doing some more travel and whatnot. So as an adult, as somebody who's not 20 years old, who can kind of live life in the fast lane a little bit, where would you like to go as a seasoned traveler, maybe?
So first of all, I try to take my kids as much as I can. So school breaks and stuff like that, we try to go and either hike here in the US just because it's cheaper. So, national parks, Appalachian Trail, Colorado, West Coast. So we try to go every time we have some time and go somewhere. But as far as the bucket list, it's still the same bucket list. And I will go with the kids, or once I can get rid of them.
Once they're grown and out the house, right?
Yeah. But
man can dream.
Yeah. But high on the list, I always wanted to be in China. I always wanted to be in India. I really want to go to New Zealand. So there's a lot of places I still haven't been. Antarctica is high on the list. I really want to go to be in Antarctica.
Yeah. I've had several people express Antarctica as a bucket list item.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
It's just so different. I've seen, again, in Patagonia, you get to see glaciers, and you get to walk on glaciers, and you get to do cruises around glaciers. And it's a different planet. Like, you literally, as if somebody transported you to a different planet. And I think on Antarctica, doing this on like a much, much, much bigger scale is definitely something I would love to do.
Yeah. Well, I think places like Antarctica and Patagonia, Alaska, that big country where it's just it just really changes your perspective on things.
Yeah.
And really kind of changes your framework a little bit,
For sure.
Like, I grew up in the Southeast, and I'm used to playing out in the woods, and I love being outside here. I'm very comfortable in that environment, but I also feel very safe in that environment. Like, I could walk out, get lost in the woods and not worry too much about it. But you think about, like, being in some of those places like that, it's like, those are life and death scenarios that you're in. You're in different country where every decision means something, and every choice you make can have a potential impact. And you can't treat things so haphazardly like you do, or like I do here and in this environment.
Sure.
It's kind of weird. I guess that's kind of a good segue. You eventually made your way to the United States, and you came to the Southeast. Why Florida?
I was in a training and simulation startup called Simigon, and Florida is the world's mecca for training and simulation. It's probably the biggest location as far as how many companies, the scale of business, the scale of clients that sit in one place when it comes to military training and simulation is Orlando.
Huh.
And people,
is that because of the Air Force bases around Florida, or
no? So it's actually Air Force is the only one that is not a big player here. But the thing is this: you have UCF, which is a huge university that has degrees in simulation all the way up to PhDs in simulation. They have degrees in training, how to facilitate training, all the way to PhDs. And right outside the fence of UCF, you have the people writing the training requirements for the Army and the Navy and the Air Force, but that's actually a smaller group. The Navy and the Army are huge here. And so around them, you have all the industry, right? Because if you have the people who have the theoretical knowledge and you have the people who write the requirements, you will also have the people supplying the goods.
Right.
So it's this perfect storm of total integration of everything to everything. And it's a very small industry. So, I've been in that industry in the US for like 7 years. And, people have been to 3 different companies, but they're still in Research Park, around UCF, in Orlando, still working kind of the same stuff. The biggest training and simulation conference in the world happens in Orlando every year for the same reason, because 30% of the company are here already. Lockheed Martin, their training and simulation group sits here in the same area, and they were our big first client in the US. And when I actually moved here, I had an office at Lockheed. So we didn't have our own office. I was actually sitting at Lockheed's offices.
That makes sense to be right there where it's all happening.
Yeah.
That's cool. So how did you transition from that role or from that career in simulation into this whole new career? Because you didn't really just shift jobs. I mean, that's a big shift in careers.
So there were a few steps actually in the process. So step one, in that company, I kind of hit the ceiling, right? I was doesn't matter number, but I was the top rank below the CEO. I couldn't be on, like, this was it. Like, there was nowhere to grow. And it was a relatively small company. I loved what I did. I did a lot of really cool things, a lot of integrations with the biggest players in the industry, Lockheed, Boeing, Flight Safety, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Air Force, Navy, Army, you name it, I was there. Which is, by the way, is interesting as a foreign national, because every place you go to visit, you have to get like approvals from here to the whoever, get you signed off, and you wear like a big red badge so everybody knows you're a potential spy. And so that was my life for 7 years. But there was nowhere for me to go. And I'm like, okay, so I stayed in the same company, and I did the MBA program. I was working full time. It was nuts. It was crazy. I was working full time, traveling because I was in charge of sales, and doing an executive MBA program all at the same time. But it gave me the confidence to make the next move, which was even crazier, which was to quit my job. I'm like, okay, I'm going to start my own company. And then we got deported because I didn't have a visa anymore. So I find myself back in Israel when my house is here, my cars are here. I had my child daycare paid for here, but I was stuck in Israel. And it took like 4 months to get back here and figure out the papers and the visa and come back to the US. And when we finally did, I started the startup in Israel. So I had investors from the US. I said, okay, in any case, the best programmers are in Israel. I find people here. They're like, okay, perfect.
The company that you're talking about at that point in time, that was People Post?
People Post. I'm in Israel. I'm hiring people, writing plans, working with them in a small room to figure out how to build this company, and finally got the papers and moved back to the US and hired a few people here, and we're developing this new product. And that's how People Post started happening. In parallel to the company growing and developing the product, the guy who was my main investor told me, listen, I really like what you're doing. I love your way of thinking. I want you to also work for my company. So he had a big travel company here in Central Florida. And I'm like, listen, you're paying me to be the CEO of the startup, and I can't do both. He said, yes, of course you can. You're a smart guy. You can do both. And so I started working for the travel company as well. I think that was potentially the first nail in the coffin of the startup, because it's very, very hard to run 2 small businesses or running 2 businesses at the same time. So that got me into the travel company, the largest wholesale travel company in the United States. It's called Turico Holidays. Its headquarters in Altamont Springs, Florida. And I started building their consumer-facing brand that is Last Minute Travel. Over time, we've built a brand new technology for it. So I had my own product team, my own technology team, my own marketing team, my own call center, my own business development group. So I really built a small little startup within a much, much, much bigger company. So Turico Holidays was 2 years ago, almost 700 people. My group was 60. So 1/10 of the company, and revenue, the same thing. Turico Holidays was $1 billion company. My group, so the last minute travel consumer facing group, generated about $100 million a year. And then we sold the company. So 2 years ago, a large private equity company bought Turico Holidays and its two largest competitors in the world. So it's a company from the UK called GTA and another company from Spain called Hotelbeds, and made them into one much, much, much bigger company. So each of those companies was $1 billion plus, and it became a 6.5 billion euro company when it was merged. But it wasn't fun to work for anymore. So I went from having the best place to work for on the planet, my own little startup in a big company, no limited resources. You can always do whatever you want as long as you're growing and get finances for your next crazy idea, to being a very, very important bureaucrat in a really, really, really large and slow organization. And I couldn't stand it. I'm a startup guy. So I was there for a year and something, and I left.
To do.
So the initial thing is I left because I wasn't happy. And I got a nice check from the company was bought. I was an executive in the company and I had stock options in the company. So financially, I was comfortable. I'm like, okay, I just don't like it anymore. I don't enjoy going to work in the morning, and I don't have to, so I'm not. And even that's a funny story, because it took 9 months, because it took them 6 months to select. So there's 3 of everything, right? It's a big merger. There's 3 of everything. And when it comes to technology, it's more than 3, because every company had a few deal. So it took forever to actually choose my product. So it's not mine, it's the team, right? I had a phenomenal team of exceptional guys, really, like guys I will take with me anywhere, to war, to the next company, to phenomenal group of people. And we built this thing, and the bigger company paying millions of dollars to consultants finally selected us. But then they said, okay, we want you to do this thing, but we wanted to do it our way. You cannot have a little startup within the bigger company. That just doesn't work that way. So your development team is going to report to the development team. Your marketing team is going to report to the marketing team. Your product team is going to report to the product team. You can't have I'm like, but you chose me because we did something unique, different, better than the other ones. And the only reason it's better and unique, it's because we did it the way we did it. And they're like, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, okay, then I'm out. And say, well, you can't be out because we gave you the keys to this whole department that is supposed to make hundreds of millions of dollars for the company. I'm like, no, you didn't give me the keys. You built something else and you gave me the keys to something else. I'm not interested in the something else. I know how to do what I did. I know how to do it well. That's why you picked me. But I can't do it your way because I don't like to do it. And so we went back and forth, and then I said, listen, I'm not the person that burns bridges. I will stay for as long as needed. I will write new work plans. I will integrate the teams. I will do all the integrations with the 700 other departments that you guys have created so this thing can work and be successful. I will hire a replacement and will train him or her, and then I would leave. And it took 9 months. So I think it's the longest notice in history of of the workforce. But then I left. So then I left without knowing what I'm going to do. I just chilled for a while, and things came to me. So, 2 of my friends said, listen, we have this small business and we're struggling and we need your help. And this is really how it started, with me investing and helping other businesses in different things. Some of them is in developing products. Some of them is in strategy. Some of them is in money. Some of them is in different ways, marketing, digital marketing. And from there, I'm like, I actually like it. I really enjoy. I told you before, I'm a mentor and teacher by heart. And so I was looking for a way to scale this. I'm like, how do I get to more people? And I said, okay, write a blog. And then I started the blog, but I'm like, I couldn't get my juices flowing because I'm like you. I enjoy talking to people. So I'm like, okay, what if I start a podcast in which I will interview people about their challenges and solutions and tools and things that they find, and build the ecosystem around that. So that's how I got to start the E-Tribe. It's really out of a personal drive to help other entrepreneurs be more successful.
And so what does E-Tribe look like now?
So the E-Tribe today is really a group of people that is growing daily, I'm happy to say, of entrepreneurs who really share information. And they share it in different ways, right? I find myself jumping on calls with 4 or 5 people on a specific subject because somebody had a question and somebody else had a solution, and 2 other people said, oh, we want to know about something we talked about, how to do UTMs and track our traffic. So we did like a little mini session on that. And then we did a little mini session on something else. Some of them just come in to be interviewed to the podcast. Some of them write blogs. So it's really a big variety of ways we share information with each other. And it's absolutely fantastic because we find different ways to help each other be more successful.
Yeah, it's basically kind of like a mastermind.
Yeah. It's an ever-going, ever-growing mastermind of really talented, interesting people.
But what I liked about it is it's the benefits and the concepts of a mastermind without all the aspects of the masterminds that I dislike so much. Which is, we talked about it, we hit on it a little bit briefly about like some of the worst advice you hear. And that's, so do you want to speak to a little bit about that? How did you want to differentiate yourself in the E-Tribe concept compared to some of those other products, if you will, that are out there?
I think one of the problems we have today, and it's a blessing and a curse at the same time, it's not just a problem, is that the tools to create professional looking content, websites, podcasts, videos are at the fingertips, and they're either free or almost free. I actually created a whole podcast episode not too long ago exactly about this, about free tools and almost free tools on how you can create a business around them. And it's everything. It's, social media posting, curating content, creating a website, monetizing it, getting traffic, customer service, recording, everything is almost free. The problem with that is that a 16-year-old kid or a 22-year-old college grad that listens to Gary Vee every morning going live, and don't get me wrong, I love Gary Vee. I think he's brilliant.
He's awesome.
But he's done 2 or 3 things before he became Gary Vee that we know today.
Right.
But the 18-year-old kid hasn't. But that 18-year-old kid or 25-year-old, it's not an age thing, it's an experience thing, has not done anything in his life to justify himself as someone to follow, as a guru, as a mentor. Again, and I'm saying that, as modest as I can. I was in 3 different startups, in managing teams in like several different countries around the world, running $100 million business in 3 different industries. Like, I've done 2 or 3 things in my life to justify why somebody would listen to me. And you asked how I differentiate. I'm trying to only bring people who are like me. People who have actually walked the walk at the highest levels. And I must say that I'm amazed with how much people are willing to give and share. People at that level, I haven't been doing this for that long. And I've already had a few people that have been on the stage on TED. And I literally approach them thinking there's no way they will answer. And they're like, yeah, we would love to be on your podcast and share. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. And so now I'm obviously a lot less intimidated approaching different people. So actually this morning I approached 3 CEOs of very interesting companies that everybody knows. And if one of them says yes, I'll be very, very happy. But I really try to go for quality, and I really try to go for depth. And I really try in every single interview and in every single article to make it very practical. So you said it before we started recording. There's so much fluff out there today. There's so much fluff like, oh, it's this and it's that, and I can help you and I can teach you and join my company and join my group and list on my thing and come to my. Again, I think the whole mastermind concept is totally butchered right now. Come to my mastermind. I'm like, how can you run a mastermind? Like, what did you do to justify being able to talk to CEOs or senior people? The recent interview I just released, the guy has been a mentor and consultant to CEOs of Fortune 100 companies for 25 years. I bow to this guy, literally. There's nothing else I can say. I'm like, so I try to bring people that I can learn from and then try to dive as deep as I can with them on things that they can be good at. And some would be digital marketing, some would be getting traffic, some would be managerial processes that can help you run a business more effectively. Some will be on strategy, but it's all the things that eventually make a successful business.
Well, and what I like about your concept, your website, and your podcast is there's so much meat and there's so much material in the interviews that you're getting. You're able to do the things that Gary Vee does. You're able to take one podcast episode and generate content, relevant content in several different formats. A lot of the articles that I was reading on the website, you don't even realize that they were based off of an interview. And that is a perfect example of quality of content. Because if you're just interviewing these people and you're just talking about all these little buzzwords like we were talking about before and these all your little favorite sayings, that doesn't hold up. Yep. It doesn't, you can't make 3 levels of content off of that. You can't, these little TV interviews that are 5 minutes of sound bites, there's nothing there. But when you're doing the research, when you're digging deep, when you're taking the time, that content emerges. And that's the other thing that you're talking about with the masterminds too. It's like even the guys that have done something, that have proven themselves over 25 years. Well, if you're charging me 10 grand to learn what it is that you learned, then that doesn't sit right with me. Then there's something, why is it that you need my 10 grand when you've made your 100 million off of, vacuum cleaner sales or what, but yeah, it's like, well, why do you need to charge somebody who's trying to figure out the same things you are, an exorbitant amount, especially a small business owner who's trying to, where every dime counts, every penny is scrutinized, and you're going to charge somebody an arm and a leg for a mastermind. That information's already out there for free if you know where to go dig it too. That's the other part.
I agree. First of all, I can't thank you enough, Nate. I this as a content creator, it's hard. People saying, oh yeah, it's an interview. No, there's so much work goes into every one of those episodes, and a lot more work goes into writing the articles, because the articles are not the script. I'm not just taking the transcription of the episode and pasting them. I'm doing a lot of research. I'm building an actual article that has value, that takes people, any one of the articles on the website, literally every single one is a guide to something, right? That if you're saying, I want to learn ABC, and you find it on my blog, it will be based on somebody who's way more knowledgeable than me. But it will be an actual guide on how to do something step by step that you can read and you can implement in your business. And that's my whole purpose. If I can help one entrepreneur, to solve a problem, to save his business, to grow his business, to be more successful or happier in life, it's worth the whole journey.
Yeah, well, you've already helped me out a ton, and we've just barely scratched the surface. So you can check that box, at least for today, certainly. I love that you described it as a guide, because that's an even better way of describing what I called articles or blog posts. But they really are. They're much more than just an article, because an article is just going to give you a couple little tips and techniques and, tricks of the trade or whatever. I just wrote one the other day about parenting through coronavirus, and your articles take that a step further.
Thank you.
They're guides. They have relevant content, information, graphs. They break it down. The Excel spreadsheet is amazing. I love the fact that, because one of the things that we want to talk about are the tools. And one of the things that you talk about are trying to determine what is the right tool for what it is that you're trying to do or trying to achieve. And you actually have a spreadsheet that breaks the different tools down that allows you to go through and figure out. I've just barely, again, scratched the surface. So I've got homework after this interview so that I can start doing some of these
things. There's
a
quiz next week.
I'm looking forward to it because it's really it's helping me and the business things that I'm trying to do tremendously. Let's talk a little bit about these tools and the different things that you're using to create some of the content that you're putting out there. What was the first tool that you started to use for eTribe, whether it be creating the website or creating content? What was because a lot of people that I think are listening to this are hoping to go down this journey. And I try to provide, again, information that's going to help them to get started. So for somebody who's just getting started, what would you tell them?
I love what you asked. What was the very first one? And the very first one is a tool I use every single day, even on weekends. It's free. So you'll see I'm the cheap entrepreneur. I run $100 million business, but I when I'm running it myself, every dollar I'm not spending is a dollar I'm making, right? So I try to look for tools that are either free or as cost effective that I can. And the tool is called Trello. Those of you who don't know it, it's just a task management tool. And I literally had a lot of the work that I needed to do already broken down to high-level tasks in Trello before I started. And every step of the research, I would add more tasks in Trello, or I would break down tasks in Trello. The problem then is obviously you now have a gazillion tasks. You're like, oh my God, this is so scary. It's such a big project. So I did two things. One is something I do all the time. And again, that's something I did in the companies I was running before as well, is I prioritize them on a daily basis. I look at the list and I'm like, okay, what is something important, not necessarily urgent, important that I have to complete today in order for my business to progress? And I move that to a different column that I call today. And usually I have 3 or 4 or 5 things there, and I will prioritize them as well. So I'm certain that the most important thing I was planning to do today will actually happen. So on a daily basis, my business is making small steps that are important for the progress of the business. The other thing that I did, by the way, and I open it right now just to look at it, so it's still there. I had 2 lists. I had pre-launch and post-launch because the list became so freaking long. They're like, oh my God, I can't even prioritize because there's so many tasks. I can't read the whole thing. So I broke it down into 2 steps. So, and I still see it's kind of funny. I still have like 3 tasks in the pre-launch, even though I've been live for a few months now. But it's, so this is the tool. And I really highly recommend it to everyone because it helps you organize and not forget anything. And I have it on the app on my phone. So when I think of something, and sometimes it's like I go to bed, I read a book, I'm like, crap, I got to remember to do 1, 2, 3. I open the phone, I put on the app, and that's it. And then it's there the next morning when I open my computer. So it helps you be organized and it helps you prioritize the most important things. So that was number 1. As far as creating content, I did a hell of a lot of research, like really, and I try everything. And if I could share the screen, I'll promise you this. I'll take screenshots of my shortcuts on my browser, and I'll send it to you. And you can post it or not, but awesome. And I'm crazy. I literally, every tool that somebody posts somewhere, like, oh, this looks cool. And I will actually spend 2 hours at night playing with it to figure out if it's for me or not. So I used a lot of tools, but when I decided I'm going to do the blog, I'm like, okay, I looked at all the different platforms and I ended up with WordPress. And I'll tell you why I ended up with WordPress. WordPress is horrible when it comes to being user-friendly. It's a mess. Because I think they created it when they created the internet, more or less. And since then, they've done a few patches, but overall, there's things here and things there, and you got to go to this submenu on that folder in order. I'm like, who the hell creates software like that? And as somebody who creates software products or did for 20 years, I'm like, this is horrific. But, and there's a big but, WordPress today runs the back end of 25 to 30% of the internet. Every third or fourth website you go to is built on top of WordPress. It means it's going to be there forever. They're not going to go bankrupt next year. It will keep on progressing. And anything you want to do, it already has as a plugin. So whether you want to sell stuff, whether you want to connect a podcast, any idea you have, somebody already created a WordPress plugin to make it easy to do because there's so many users. So the ecosystem of WordPress is so powerful. You learn how to live with the stupidity of how the user interface works.
One of the next questions I had was about web hosting and website development, because right now I currently use Wix, and I thought Wix was going to be the savior for SEO, but apparently I got it completely backwards.
Yes.
And WordPress is the way to go for SEO.
Correct.
And for all the optimization that you want to try to do. So from a guy like me who doesn't know all that technical end of everything, how do I go from a user-friendly platform like Wix, who doesn't ultimately fulfill my needs, and mitigate that over to WordPress?
Perfect question. First of all, it's a learning curve. Second, I mean, there's no magic. There's no magic wand I can wave and suddenly Nate knows how to create a website on WordPress. Sadly, I would love to. By the way, I'm working on the next closest thing. Like, because a lot of people approach me, just like you now, we're doing an interview, but a lot of people who listen are like, how do you do this? How are you doing that? And I'm helping them, like I said, either one by one or in small groups. I'm not charging anybody anything. I'm really doing this just to help people out. But the first course I'm going to create is going to be how to create a website in 3 days. And not just create a website, because again, there's a million tutorials out there on how to create a website in 3 days, but most of them are junk because they ignore. I'm an infrastructure kind of guy. I want the back end to be done perfectly right, because then scaling becomes easy. If you mess up the back end,
huge part of
you
it.
can't scale. You will work very hard for 6 months, and then you'll hit a wall that is impossible to go over the way you did it. And so now what's going to be in the course? The first thing, the host that I'm using is called Bluehost. And again, I have a whole thing on my website. I will share it with you so you can post it. But if you go to theetribe.com/tools, you will find a list of all the tools that I'm using with links to every single one of them. Some of them are affiliate links, some of them are not. So the companies who did not accept me as an affiliate, I still post them because I think they provide value. And I chose them after a long due diligence, right?
And we'll have links to that in our notes as well, to your site to get that.
So Bluehost, the benefit in Bluehost is it's a phenomenal starting platform, and it's a phenomenal scaling platform until you get to a bigger size, which I'm very far from. And I think 95% of the people will never get to. So why is it good? It's like $3 to $6 a month for hosting. You get a lot of goodies. And this is the biggest thing for your question, when you sign up for Bluehost, they're asking you, do you want to run your website on WordPress? You say yes, and they take care of everything.
Nice.
So the whole installation, figuring out all the tech stuff that, to be fair, I don't know. Even though I ran big companies, I always had tech people working for me. You don't need to know. Like you say yes, and the thing goes move on, and it tells you, okay, put in a username and password, and that's it. And now you have a WordPress installed, ready to run on your hosting platform. Now it's still empty. There's nothing in there. So then the next 2 steps to make your life easy, or 3 steps, actually, I'll give 3 tips on how to make it easy to start a WordPress, beautiful looking website. The first thing you need to do in WordPress, so WordPress is just like an engine, right? It's the car's engine. If you look at a car, you don't see the engine. You see the outside of the car. WordPress calls that a theme. So what you see on your screen is a theme that is installed in WordPress. There's probably millions of themes. There's probably 20 really good ones. And if you start reading ideas and suggestions, you'll see the same names coming again and again and again. Again, after a lot of research, the one I landed on is Astra. And I chose Astra for 2 very good reasons. One of them you already know. It's free. Actually, 3 reasons. So 1, it's free. The second reason, it's very fast. So speed is a big component of SEO score. It's a big component, even more than SEO, on user experience. People just don't wait. If they just sit there and the thing is spinning for the website to load, they're going to shut it off and move to something else. So Astra is very, very fast. And the third component, I decided to develop my website on the closest thing to Wix on WordPress, which is Elementor Pro. So Elementor Pro takes all the benefits of Wix, of drag and drop, move, resize, define the parameters of a picture, and add a header, but it brings it into the world of WordPress. And Astra, now some of the things collide with the WordPress tools. So you can't use them together because things will start breaking. Astra and Elementor Pro work very, very well together. And the last thing about Astra is that it has a very solid SEO background. So there's a lot of SEO benefits for using Astra. So that's the fourth reason. I said 2, then 3, now 4 reasons why I'm using Astra. But again, I switched like 4 or 5 different themes before I ended up with Astra, and I'm very happy. And I've been with them for a few months, and it's solid and it's great.
That's a perfect answer to that question. That's exactly.
And I'll say one more last tip, which is really great. And again, took me a while to find out. So Elementor Pro has a lot of templates built in. You go in, you have a template for this, a template for that. But there is another company called Envato, and I'm probably butchering their name, but it's Envato. And they do their own themes, and they do a lot of plugins, and they do different things. But one of the things they have is called Envato Elements. And it's, again, it has a free version and a paid version. The free version brings hundreds of high quality, beautiful templates to full, complete websites. Homepage, landing pages, about us, disclaimers, product pages, contact us pages, everything, and every one of them has 3 or 4 different variations, and it's built to work with Elementor Pro. So you really start with something like, okay, this is the style that I like. It's not exactly, I don't like the pink, I want it purple, and I don't want this font, and I want the pictures to be a little different. But overall, that's the look I was looking for. And you will find one because there's so many. You literally import the entire website into Elementor Pro, and then you can customize every single thing, the fonts, the headers, the pictures, the way they show up, the sidebar, the menus, everything. But you start, and that's the trick, right? If you want to have a beautiful looking website that you can later on customize, not in day one, because in day one, you just want to launch and you want to start generating content. Get WordPress, get Astra, get Elementor Pro, and get Envato themes. The whole thing that I said right now, the whole thing is less than $100 a year, right? It's practically free. Like a night out for drinks with your buddies will cost you that amount of money. And you're starting a business.
Could you imagine back in the day, this much access to this many tools for this cheap?
It's not. Just, and literally you can take one of those beautiful templates, bring it to Elementor, put your information in the templates, right? At the end of the day, it's your website, and click launch, and you're up and running. And yes, it's not going to be perfect from an SEO perspective, and it's not going to be connected to the Google Analytics in the back end. But if you want to have a website and look professional and be up and running and be able to bring value to people, it's extremely easy.
In my perspective, being set up for growth.
Yes.
Like being set up to where you can take that website to a whole nother level.
Absolutely.
Because that's the problem that I ran into is that with Wix, it's like, yeah, I could get this real pretty thing out there pretty quickly. Yeah. But then that's it. Like I'm limited in everything, then you're done. I mean, it's...
So yeah, like I said, I mean, some of the biggest websites on the planet run on WordPress. So you can scale with no limit.
We've talked about some really, really helpful apps that are cheap, free, and that will really launch your business to a new level. And you've taken the time to go through a lot of these and to learn them, to find out what the best ones are.
Yes.
I'm very curious. What's one that you spent time learning and getting into that was a colossal failure? Maybe one that you thought was going to do some really great things for you or was going to be a solution that ended up not being?
Okay, so it's a great question because I have something that I'm still very emotional about. I have a great love-hate relationship with it because it's a phenomenal tool. They're just not telling you everything, and you're like, and the ramifications of them not telling you are very severe, and I will share. So I found out, by the way, through a different podcaster, that there's a tool out there that's called Octopus CRM. What Octopus CRM allows you to do is it allows you to automate things you do on LinkedIn, which is phenomenal. So let's say I create a new thing specifically for doctors who are entrepreneurs. I can run a search in LinkedIn for doctors and entrepreneurs, and will give me probably 500,000 people. Well, guess what? I cannot write messages for 500,000 people. But what it does, it enables you to grab the information from LinkedIn with one click of a button, draft a quote unquote personalized message. Hello, first name. I saw that you worked for company A and company B. I find that very relevant for this and that. I just did an article that will be very helpful. Go check it out. Here's the link. Right? And it will send it to these people one by one with that personalized message. And it's, again, very cost effective. So I think the base version is like $29 a month or $26 a month. But it allows you to send these personalized messages. It allows you to send connect messages to people. And in the more advanced versions, it allows you to do a lot of more complicated stuff. So I'll give you an example of a scenario. You send a connection, a personalized quote unquote connection request. As soon as the person replies, you send them a message that you pre-drafted. Thank you very much for getting back to me. I would really appreciate if you can do this and that. Can we jump on a call? Here's my phone number. You can even give them kudos for things they've done. So, I don't remember how LinkedIn call this. Like when you know something, like your skills, right? They like, okay, you can say, okay, they have this and that skill based on what's the top skills that they're already ranked for. Like, it's brilliant. I'm like, this is exactly the stuff that I love. These are the tools that I love. And it's easy to use. It's simple. There's only one problem. The problem is LinkedIn obviously does not like when people use these kind of tools on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn flagged me and basically told me, if you ever do this again, we're shutting down your account. So I wrote a message to the support team and say, hey guys, what the hell? Like, this is the message I got from LinkedIn. What's going on? I said, oh, yeah. You should not send more than X number of messages a day. I think it's like 40 like 60. You should not send more than 30 connection requests per day, and then you'll be safe. I'm like, and now I'm going to curse. I'm giving people who want to cover their kids' ears if they're listening. Why the fuck didn't you put this as part of your product? Like, what?
Yeah, why not set those parameters on the product?
Limit, if you're aware that this puts your customers at risk by having their account shut down on LinkedIn, why isn't that built in? Why am I allowed to send the 41st message?
Right.
So I had to cancel my service with them because I can't take the risk. I cannot run what I run without LinkedIn. I just cannot.
No.
So I'm like, you lost me as a client that probably would have upgraded to the biggest level you have to do all the fancy schmancy integrations and tricks. And now I cannot use you. And you know what she told me? She told me, oh, on the high paying product, the limit exists. I'm like, you're idiots. That's the very, very first thing you have to do. Keep your client safe.
That shouldn't be the last step. That should be the first step.
The very first one, because now you lost me as a client.
Yeah. And I mean, and you're their ideal demographic. You're their ideal customer.
Absolutely.
We both are.
Yeah. So you asked me.
So when I sign up, do the same thing. Just do it only for 40 at a time, right?
Stay below the radar. Just stay below the radar. As an Air Force pilot, I should have known to stay below the radar.
Right.
Just didn't even
that
think
should have been square one for you, right?
Yes.
Mm. How are you consuming content? How are you learning?
Wow. So first of all, I will say it's not a fair game. It's not a fair game because I can afford in the last year or so not to work for a living. So I have a lot of hours in the day to consume content. But I read books, I read blogs, I pay for paid courses online, I listen to podcasts. So and I love it. I love learning. It's a big passion of mine. And so I enjoy doing this beyond the professional interest. I literally enjoy the process of learning. Now, with the whole Corona thing and having two of my kids homeschooling online with me in my home office, and not driving, right? The whole benefit of podcasts is that you can learn while you're on the road. I'm not on the road.
Right.
So I went from listening to 2 to 3 podcasts a day to listening to 2 a week, which is horrible. Yeah. I love listening to podcasts.
I want to go through some of these just so we can give listeners some good ones. So give me one of your favorite podcasts from a professional, like learning and professional development standpoint. And then what's your favorite fun podcast that you just like to enjoy? Once we take down E-Tribe and Extraordinary Podcast, then we can go from there.
Yeah. No, I don't think I'm up there. It's, you know this, right? You do a podcast, you record, you spend a lot of time researching, you do the interview, you do the editing, which is a lot of work. You try to really make it the most valuable that you can. And then you put it out there and you don't have a clue unless people, and it happens more and more. And it's so much fun. Like people will find you on LinkedIn, people you never heard of, people in other countries. I'm like, I listen to the thing. I love it. It's great. Or people you haven't seen since childhood, right? And they saw it on Facebook and they're like, this is awesome. I listened to this. And so you guys, listeners, write back to Nate and say, Nate, you're doing amazing, because it really warms our hearts. But now going to people who I look up to and I learn from a lot. The two that I probably learn from the most as far as practical things, one is Pat Flynn. And again, if you've been listening to podcasts and you live on this planet, you've heard Pat Flynn before. But Pat is one of those people that built an empire starting out of necessity and really learned the hard way every single step of the way. And he really brings value. He brings guests that are teaching people very practical things. And the other that is very focused on digital marketing, but I'm very much a marketing guy in my core, is Michael Stelzner. And the podcast is
spell his last name for me.
I don't think he knows how to spell his last name.
I'm not familiar with him.
Social Media Marketing World.
Social Media Marketing World.
Yeah. And the website is actually Social Media Examiner. It's coming back to me. Social Media Marketing World is their annual conference. It's a huge digital marketing conference in California every year, like huge, like thousands of people. But he has his own podcast. In the last year, they've developed their own YouTube channel as well. And same kind of thing. He's a great, fantastic interviewer. So half of why I enjoy listening to him is I just learn how he interviews people.
Right.
Literally, like
techniques.
It's fascinating. He's a copywriter by trade. That's what he did. He was a writer and a copywriter. So he comes from that world.
So he's brilliant.
He's a really brilliant guy. And again, he brings top-notch marketing people across the board. So young, just starting marketers with cool ideas and great vibe, all the way to the biggest names in the industry. And he's just great.
Nice.
Stuff that I listen to just for fun. And there's a lot that I listen to just for fun. But I like listening to Guy Raz with How I Built This on NPR. You don't learn anything other than the entrepreneurial journey that people go to. That gives you perspective and inspiration. So he's great. There's another one. I don't remember the name. It's a history BBC podcast. And it's brilliant because what they do, so, it's the BBC. They've been freaking recording radio since radio was invented. So they share historical events and they have either interviews or recorded sessions from people who have actually been there. So you learn of anything in history and so many things I've never heard of or didn't know the specifics and so on. And then you listen to actually people who were there share their
Like
personal
people in
story.
the room
Yeah.
kind of thing.
So
That's cool.
it's brilliant. I don't remember the name, but if you look up BBC History, I was there podcast.
I'm not familiar with that one either.
It's one of my favorites. It's one of those, my brain can't do anything professional right now.
Yeah, when you just need that decompression moment kind of thing.
This is what I like listening.
Well, because those are important. Like my whole theme this week with the podcast that we just published and the what we're promoting through social media this week is all about recovery and rejuvenation and resetting and getting back into balance and everything. And it's like I love to read and I love to read self-help type stuff, but at certain points in time, that's you need to read some fiction, you need to read you need to have some other things that you use to decompress with.
I always read both at the same time. I always have like a fiction and a nonfiction book, and I usually read a little bit like on Kindle and stuff, but I mostly read either a physical book or I will listen to the audiobook, like one of the two. I very rarely read on digital other than like, blogs and manuals and guides and stuff like that. But reading like a book, I usually read the physical book.
I found it really interesting that you and I are some of the only people that I've talked to that do keep a couple of books going at a certain time. Most people, it's like, I got to just be on this one or whatever the case may be. But I, like you, I enjoy having one or two, and I'll even have one or two different nonfiction ones. Like as I'm starting to get towards the end of one, I'll go ahead and get another one or two going. What are some of the books that made a big impact on you?
Wow. So, there's the usual suspects. I think there's so many people read 10X, people read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a lot of these kind of books. So I obviously read all of them. A book I really, really like and I give as a gift to a lot of people is Delivering Happiness. It's the guy who is the CEO of Zappos. It's really a brilliant, brilliant book.
I'll get a link to it on the show notes as well. Make sure we have the links to all of these different products that we're talking about. And there was a couple of books we were talking about. I was hoping you might remember the name of them. You were reading one or two books about some Israelis, specifically one guy that went back to visit his family in like Yemen.
Yeah, so it's a fiction book that I'm reading right now. It's called The Shoemaker from Kokaban, and I don't even know if it's in English. I'm reading it in Hebrew.
Oh, well.
And so it might be. It might have been translated, but it's a very, very interesting book because it shares a personal journey of a guy who's now a big name broker on Wall Street. So that's all he knows. It's like the shark, eat everybody or die kind of mentality.
The Jordan Belfort type.
Yeah. And he, divorced his wife because all he cared about is his business and backstabbed his boss that brought him to learn everything he knows. And then he goes back to the small village where his mother grew up to kind of close a circle that he needed to close for himself. And the whole collision of a really, really small community that lives based on very old traditional Jewish values of praying to God for everything, when he's like, what the hell are you talking about? Just for what do you need? Like, I'll buy you a cow. And he does. He like goes and buys them a cow so they have meat. Like, no, we'll pray for God and he'll deliver. And like, so the whole worlds colliding is it makes it a fascinating story.
That's cool.
So yeah, I'm reading that right now. I'm also reading or listening to a book called Indistractable, and from the word to be distracted, so not from destruction. And it's by Nir Eyal, and it's a life-changing book. So if you looked for a recommendation of like, okay, what do I need to read in order to get a different perspective in life and be able to literally make my life happier and more productive, this is my current recommendation.
Excellent. That's perfect. Oh, that's great. Yeah. No, I'm kind of in the same boat because I find if I've got time to sit in front of the screen, then there's other stuff I got to be doing. Like
I didn't think about it, but you're probably right.
Yeah, that's a good aspect of it. So one of the people that we both look up to, admire a lot, is Elon Musk.
Yes.
Are there any other mentors like that, people that you look up to that have made an impact on your life, similar to that same vein?
So I'll tell you something interesting. First of all, like I said, the delivering happiness made a very big impact on me. Tony Shi, that's the name of the guy. So his book is brilliant because he has a lot of life lessons on just make sure everybody's happy and give them what they want, and you can create a clan of people like you who will help you out and will help you grow. But if I look to people who really made a big impact on my life, it's actually people I know. One of them is my dad. My dad is still one of my biggest idols. And I don't know if he knows that. I assume he does, but I'll send him the podcast. Now he'll know for sure. But my dad is a hardworking, humble, highly professional, very detail-oriented person. And a lot of the way I behave is because I've been around him all the time. The other one is my mom, which is exactly the opposite. My mom is this lively person who has zero fear of crowds, who will go up on stage and organize a game because the sound system fell down and they can't start the actual program. And she was a kindergarten teacher for years. And I can't tell you how many events I was a kid, like a 3-4-year-old, standing behind her on stage in front of hundreds of people. She's like, okay, let's sing this song. You guys on the left do this. You guys on the right do that. Because the actual show or whatever couldn't start for whatever reason. And she just went up on stage. So a lot of my being an extrovert and being able to talk in front of crowds and make a total fool of myself on stages is from her. And then my wife. My wife is the most human-loving, caring, giving person I've ever met. She puts other people ahead of her 10 out of 10 times. And when you're next to somebody like that for many years, you slowly move in that direction, right? It's not that I'm like her. I'm not even close. But I'm slowly moving towards her and becoming a more caring, a more giving person, which I think is phenomenal. So yeah, so a lot of the people that impacted me. Oh, and the last one that we'll mention is my previous boss, the guy who brought me over to the company and really allowed me to thrive and grow. And his name is Uri Argov, and he is such an exceptional person on so many different levels. But he's just that person that will surround himself with smart, talented, driven people and will do everything to make them happy and give them the tools to excel. And he creates this ecosystem where everybody benefits. So really a lot of what I'm doing today, I've learned from those people, right? So my mom, my dad, my wife, and my last boss.
And how blessed we are that,
amen,
for whatever reason, God decided to look down on us and put us around those people. Like I reflect on that quite a bit because, a lot of people weren't given as many opportunities or have certainly had bigger challenges. And I look at the people who have impacted me, and you go back to mom and dad right off of the bat. And when you've got strong, solid examples as parents, man, it eliminates a lot of excuses for not being successful.
Yes.
It really doesn't give you a whole lot of leg to stand on if you can't get it figured out when you've got people like that around you.
Sure.
For sure. Tell me about how you met your wife.
Wow. It's a funny story, actually. So my wife is married. My wife is married to me. Her cousin is married to as far as I know, right? Okay, there's people living two lives and stuff like that. But having 3 kids and the amount of time we're locked in at the house, I think she's just married to me.
Pretty sure.
It's a good guess, I think. But her cousin is married to one of my best friends from high school. So the guy I shared a desk with for 3 years in high school is married to her cousin, and we met at the wedding. So we danced the whole evening. We kind of found each other. She had a boyfriend at the time, and she kind of drifted away from him, and that's it. And now we've been married for over 15 years and have 3 beautiful children. So yeah, things
amazing. That's good.
A great story.
You and I are on the very similar trajectory with what we're trying to do with eTribe, and for me, I've got the 8 keys to great concept that I'm put together. And one of the biggest things that we share in common is the fact that we want to get this content out for free.
Yes.
And we want to be able to have, like for me in particular, I always want to make sure that someone's financial situation is never the barrier that keeps them from getting the information that they need to be successful.
Sure.
And we've both, I think, been really successful at getting a lot of really good quality content out there. I mean, the stuff that you're putting out there, I was actually shocked. I kept waiting for the hook, like I kept waiting for okay, where's, submit your credit card here, submit your payment. They're like, this is a temporary offer, blah, blah, blah. But you and I aren't in that game. And I love that about your concept. And the reason why we're able to do that was because we were both given a financial opportunity.
Sure.
To be able to afford ourselves this window of time to be able to do that.
I agree.
But obviously that can't go on forever. So long-term plans, I'm very curious for the eTribe. How do you ultimately sustain that and continue to provide high-level quality content for free?
I'm going to win the lottery. That's the plan. No.
I like that.
No.
I just saw a great post that said, if somebody walks in the gas station and sees you scratching off lottery tickets, chances are your life plan isn't going exactly like you thought it would. I'm not there yet, but I'm not too far off.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there, brother. But here's the thing. I think there are many good ways and fair ways to monetize free content. And if I look at it on 2 different perspectives. Perspective number 1 is really deeper level courses, right? So I'm never planning to charge anything for what I do on the day-to-day. I can't tell you how appreciative I am for what you're saying, because you don't get that all the time, right? You work very hard, but not a lot of people come say, this is good stuff. This is really quality content. So I'm going to keep on doing this. I'm going to keep on spending, and I spend an hour a day, sometimes more, looking for people to interview online, just on research, because I want to maintain that level. And there's enough people on the planet, right? I can keep on recording from now till the end of time. But so that's one aspect. I will develop courses specifically on how to develop websites, like specifically on how to do data analytics to whatever it is that you're doing. Because a lot of people like you and me create content, but they don't have a clue how to track it. And to me, it's mind-blowing. And again, it's because I came from large companies, because I have that mindset of like, if you don't do it, if you can't track it, don't do it. Like literally, that was my mantra through 20 years of doing software development and tools and products. So yes, these will be to people who are on the next level, who are wanting to go deeper, and they'll be willing to pay the money. And then I feel right with it. Why do I feel right with it? Because I'm giving them the tools to make money.
Yeah, you're giving them value.
It's an investment. I'm saving you 6 months of research that I had to do to develop my website to the level I've developed it. If I would have found the level of course that I'm developing today for the website, if I would have found a level that good of a course 6 months ago, I would have been live 6 months ago. Or whatever, right? It doesn't matter. But it would have saved me a lot of time, and hence it's worth X amount of dollars to spend. So that's aspect number 1. But aspect number 2, and I'm not there yet, and I'm not, again, it's still a process that I'm working through of developing these courses, and again, fine-tuning the courses. And I'm doing this, it's actually very easy. I'm waiting to see what people are asking me for. So people are asking me, just like you did, like, how did you do this? How did you build this website? I'm like, okay. So a lot of people are asking, I'm going to do that. Same thing with the tracking. Like a lot of people are asking me, how do I track this? Because every time people talk to me, like, oh, I saw this. I saw, like, how do you know? Like, what do you mean? How do I know? How don't you not know? I'm like, I don't know. So that's that's one aspect. But the other aspect that I see very clearly, and that's me, right? It's not for everyone. I already have 3 or 4 different leads of people who want me involved in their businesses in some kind of way. And I still didn't figure out, because it's new for me and it's new for them. But it will end up me being either a consultant or sitting on their board or being an investor or all of the above, right? And if you need one of those to work well to pay for the entire year of content, right? Because one good gig like that can generate enough money for the livelihood of your family. So I promised myself when I started this journey, which is taking way longer than I expected, I promised myself that I'm not going to stress and stop because I'm not generating revenue yet. I'm going to pursue the goal of providing quality value to help other people. And I know the stars will align. And they are, slowly, much slower than I expected, but they are. Again, those few beginnings that I have are fascinating and they're interesting and they could lead to something big. Maybe they won't, but then there'll be 3 others.
Yeah. They never come as fast. It's never as much as fast as you want it to, but it is very reassuring. Every little positive feedback that you do get, every little forward progress that you make, it's very reassuring. But the times when you're not getting those, that's the times when it's tough.
Yes.
We're like, is there anybody out there? Do you really
listen? Like I said, and you said it as well. I mean, I'm blessed. I'm lucky. Call it whatever you want to call it. That I can do this without working full time because I can afford it right now. Can I afford it forever? Absolutely not. I need to start making money somehow. But for now, I can afford it, and it's a huge benefit compared to other people who are trying to start this progress. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm doing it so people don't have to spend 3 months in research. They can pay $400 and have a website 3 days later.
Yeah. Well, and what I like about it too is the fact that because we don't have such a rush to monetize, you're able to spend a lot of time and effort developing the free content, developing the free stuff first, because I don't think that it takes time to develop quality content, and the really good quality content that's worth valued where somebody's going to want to pay for it. That doesn't come right out of the gate. Like that
Sure.
content doesn't come until you've provided all that other free content.
I agree.
Earlier.
I agree. I think, listen, there are a lot of shortcuts in the world today, and I probably should have taken some. Right? I don't have to figure it out on my own, and I have.
You and me both.
So a lot of people are taking just the shortcuts, and I think that's the problem. We talked about this earlier. So I think I'm going to keep on working very hard to generate actionable, high-quality content. Something you can actually take and implement in their job, in their life, in their company, in their team. That's what I'm trying to do. You can do 1, 2, 3, 4 in order to achieve this goal. And it's not me saying this, it's somebody who has been doing that one thing as a profession for the last X number of years. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on my show.
Yeah. And then you go do that and come back tomorrow, and here's the next 4 steps to continue. It's really actual traction. Yeah. I love that. That is so much about what's missing out there. There's nothing with any traction. What's your TED Talk going to be about?
Wow, that's a great question. So it's been a dream of mine, right? I think a lot of people who are extroverts and like consuming content dream of being on TED. The original one that I wanted to talk about was when I did People Post, and People Post was all about Web 3.0. Because you think about the evolution of Web 2.0 was, okay, the first web was big companies generating content. Web 2.0 came and said, oh, everybody can generate content.
Everybody in the game now.
The problem was, and to an extent it still is, that still the people who benefit from the content is the big companies. Mostly. Right? And I think that's unfair. It doesn't make any sense. I think Web 3.0, and we're slowly moving there, will be if I'm generating content, any content, one snippet, one tweet that made you sell something. So I bought a new camera and I love it. Again, I'm a photographer. I bought a new camera and a new lens, and it's phenomenal, and I like it. And I post the first shot I did of a bird, and I say, this is exceptional. If you're into birds photography, buy this lens and that thing. And I just put it out there on social media. And you click this and you go and buy that Nikon, I get paid as an affiliate. And that was People Post. That was the whole concept of People Post, is how to make the world an affiliate network, because it is today. 60% of purchases are made based on recommendations of people we know. 60%. And yet they make nothing. It's just unfair. And so that was my first one. The second one is something that I hopefully, maybe one day, I have a concept that again grew over time, but now it's the four-legged stool for building a successful company. And what I think are the pillars of building a successful company, doesn't matter in which industry, in what market, where in the world. I think the same rules apply. So
yeah,
one day on TED, that's going to be my
like
TED talk.
My 8 keys to great, same kind of, you got your 4 legs of the stool. I got my 8 keys to unlock the doors. Yeah, that's awesome. That's very cool. Well, I'm looking forward to the day that I see that coming across YouTube.
Amen.
It's only a matter of time.
I believe so. I really do.
With what you're doing and the concepts that you're laying out there for people, there's so much value in what you're doing. Again, like I was talking with my last guest, it's like, it's hard to imagine not being successful when you're pushing out quality content. I always want everyone to have an opportunity to promote their business in social media. And obviously with eTribe, that's where we can find everything that you have out there. But I also want to give people an opportunity to talk about their charities and any organizations that they're involved with. You got anybody like that you'd like to plug?
Sure. I'll mention it just because it's dear to my heart. But first of all, I say about the first thing you said, it's the eTribe. And a lot of people kind of think that there is just there. No, it's actually the eTribe. You got to spell it out when you look for the podcast or when you look for the website. So it's the eTribe.com.
Mine doesn't have the, so it creates problems.
Yeah. So I guess both options have a problem, but just if you people are looking. But as far as charity, there's an Israeli Scouts organization. So it's like the Israeli chapter of the US Scouts, but it's the Israeli chapter. And what they started doing is they started creating chapters in the US of the Israeli Scouts in order to keep kids of Israelis who live in the US connected back to Israel.
Cool.
And it's phenomenal. So we're both my wife and I are volunteering, and she's on the board, and we're helping in every single activity. And it's fantastic. It's not just us. There's like a lot of people here in the community involved, but it's phenomenal that somebody took the initiative, and it's phenomenal that people signed up to help.
Well, and with all the trouble that traditional Boy Scouting program has gone through with the bankruptcy and whatnot, it's great to see some arm of that still existing and still thriving. That's great.
Yes.
Where can people find out more information about that? Do they have like a website or anything?
Wow, it's a good question. It's part of my life, right? I never thought about is there a website, because I'm there or either on calls or whatever.
Well, your hands on too, your boots on the ground.
Yeah. I will find out, and I will send you a link so you can find out.
We'll put it on the show notes for sure. Listen, I really appreciate your time, and honestly, I mean, I've probably got another hour's worth of content that we could talk about. So, if you're up for it, I would like to look at trying to do this again and digging even deeper. I think you gave out a lot of really good information that a lot of people can take some value away from, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Nate. This was fantastic. I really had a good time. I wish we could do this over beers rather than Corona over Squadcast, but maybe the next time we'll do this face-to-face.
Well, that being said, I am going to be back down in Orlando. I'm down there pretty regular, so it's a great excuse for us to get together. So
phenomenal.
I think we can make that happen.
The drive is on you, beers are on me.
Sounds like a winner. Thank you for your time.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nate.
Hey y'all, thanks for listening. So, what'd you think? What did I miss? Was there a topic you wish we had covered? Was there an area of discussion you want to know more about? Or was the whole thing just too long? Please Send us your questions and feedback on social media to @ExtraordinaryPodcast or check out our website, extraordinarypodcast.net. Subscribe there for all the latest episodes, blog posts, and more. And if you're tired of living the same old ordinary life, shoot me an email, nate@extraordinarypodcast.net, and I will send you your own customizable blueprint that will walk you through step by step how to create your own extraordinary life. And if you or someone you know already fits the profile, you can submit a request to be interviewed on the website as well. Finally, if you like what you heard or learned today, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and follow the Extraordinary Podcast on all your favorite platforms like YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. And if you feel inspired, show your support for the show by donating through Patreon. It is through this financial support that we are able to continue to bring to light ordinary people living extraordinary lives. Thank you for your support, and most of all, just being you. This is Nate G, and we'll see you next week.